So sorry for the late post. I got hit by a car and then somebody stole my laptop and then I got abducted by aliens. So, it's been a crazy week. Hi everybody, welcome back to A Well-Read Nerd. If you didn't get the semi-meta humor in the opening bit for this, today I'm going to be talking about something fan fiction related. If it's not your thing, don't have to hang around. You can hang around, you might learn something new. Because I've learned as an adult that I've been so entrenched in fan created works for so long, writing them, reading them, engaging with them, that there are some things that I just take for granted. Knowledge that I take for granted. And it was actually through a funny conversation I had with my friend a couple of weeks ago, back when I first posted what this video was going to be about, that not everybody has the same frame of reference for things like jokes. Because I sent him what I thought was frankly hilarious TikTok. I was giggling like a maniac. And then I proceeded to have to spend 5-10 minutes explaining the joke, which always ruins it. So if you've ever been in that predicament, don't worry. Just show your friend this video. They can sit through it and then at least they'll get your jokes next time. But yeah, today I'm going to be talking about, if you can tell by the title, the citrus scale. Now, what is the citrus scale? The short answer is it's complicated. The long answer will be the rest of this video, so stay tuned. But I'm going to break this down into a few parts. First part is just going to be explaining what it is, how it's used, and then I'm going to go into a little bit of history of where it comes from and how it's made a resurgence in popularity in recent years. So let's just begin by saying what it is. This is a nifty little diagram I found on Google. Doesn't really tell you much, but it basically breaks down into several levels. Particularly, you have orange at the top, then lime, lemon, and then grapefruit. Grapefruit is tied in with something else I'm going to talk about a little. If you guys want an expanded video about that, where I could talk about dead dove do not eat, please comment down below. I will gladly explain it, but be warned, you're probably not going to like the answer unless you're the kind of messed up who ended up on my YouTube channel, in which case, welcome. But in any case, that's the general breakdown of it. Now, these are colloquially used in fan fiction to denote the content of a fan fiction. This has been floating around for years, decades at this point. I'll get into a little bit later in the history, but these have been used since I was a teenager first engaging in fan works. Where they came from and stuff, again, that's the history bit. If you don't really care what this is, if you know what it is, but you want to know a little bit of history, mind the timestamps, you can just go ahead and jump over to that when I talk about that. But yeah. So to break these down, each citrus denotes a level of content. These are from days when the E through MA/E things weren't really a part of fan fiction and fan-driven communities. So this was sort of an organic thing that came about. Now, at the top level are oranges. We have something to denote the most wide scope audience friendly content. If something is denoted as being orange, which you're not going to see this very often, it basically means it's good for everybody. Think of this as a GPG kind of thing. There might be some romantic undertones to it, but it's not going to be anything explicit. Up from that, one of the older terms on this chart, we have lime. Lime denotes sort of to use a more modern term, spicy note to it. Nothing really explicit, just slightly more than your general GPG when it comes to its depictions. These are also more guidelines open for interpretation, so tread with caution as always. After that, we have our lemon, arguably the oldest of these nomenclature. that's been used. Lemon denotes something which is adult oriented, not necessarily explicit. There's a little bit of leeway between the lime and the lemon content, but definitely like your PG-13 light R. Let's go with that. Like, you can get a little bit more explicit with lemon, and some people do. But again, it wouldn't be that uncommon to see something that is definitely graphic in nature without being explicitly graphic, tagged as a lemon, especially back in the olden days. Things have changed about tagging and stuff like that, and that's a whole other video. Again, comment below if you want me to explain that. And at the same time, I'll explain to you why I hate Wattpad. But yeah, so that's definitely more adult content. Like I said, it doesn't have to be explicit adult content. It typically is, or was back in the day when I really saw this being used. But yeah, it's basically anything that you would consider geared towards a more adult reader, with or without the explicitness of it. After that, you have something that I only really saw in like the last 5-6 years. If anybody and that's watching this knows down below, if you saw it beforehand, is grapefruit. Grapefruit definitely denotes like explicit content. And like I said, a lot of times I've seen that lumped in with Dead Dove Do Not Eat, which is its own thing. I don't necessarily know why a lot of people are lumping them together, except for the fact that Dead Dove does not necessarily denote like, I'm far enough past the censors, like sexually explicit content. I say that because I have gotten marks before on some of my videos for how soon I say things. Not like big marks, just like, like somebody reported it and I had to send an email back to YouTube. But not enough to get it taken down. But yeah, Dead Dove Do Not Eat is not explicitly a sexual manner or like material. It's definitely something that may make several people not sleep well at night, but it is not inherently sexual. So I can see kind of that, like using the grapefruit to denote how there's a sexual component to Dead Dove Do Not Eat, but it's like that. I think I'm just gonna have to do a little bit more digging through. There are literally thousands, if not millions, of fandoms. Things are used in different ways. I did not see these two lumped together in any of the fandoms that I frequent, which again, I will not tell you which ones those are and which ones I still occasionally dabble in writing in. You just have to figure it out. I wouldn't expect any of you guys to out yourselves down below. I'm not going to out myself, because I have a lot less anonymity when you can see my face. But in any case, that's generally what the scale is. It's a scale to denote the content level of the material that you're reading, specifically when dealing with adult or sexual content. Okay? Now, you might be thinking, especially if you've seen things, terms thrown around like TikTok and stuff like spicy and stuff like that, where the hell does this come from? And the answer is, it's complicated, okay? And I'm going to preface this entire section on the history of the citrus scale with these 3 things. 1, the fandom, no matter what fandom it is not a monolith. Keep that in mind. 2, most things in the fandom community are anecdotal. What I mean by that is a lot of people share stories, even stories like circulating at the time in which these things are coming about. A lot of it is purely anecdotal. And 3, the fandom community moves fast. Trends come and go quickly, and as soon as mainstream picks up on it, chances are it's already faded from the hardcore fandom communities. A case in point is Omegaverse, or as I know it, ABO, which I did a video for. You can watch it down here. It's one of my earlier videos. It's not very good. Bear with it. It's informative enough. But in that case, I've seen a lot of content coming onto fandom spaces that are clearly new creators. Nothing wrong with that. great that people are engaging in fandoms and fan content how they want. The thing is I can clearly see that they are people who have been influenced by a lot of the Kindle books in like Omegaverse books, because they're coming in and instead of that ingenuity that you would see before, you see a lot of overplaying of the tropes that you're seeing in those novels. It's becoming codified as an entire subgenre based off of those, as opposed to what it was when it was at its height in a lot of fandoms, say 8-9 years ago. And some a little less than that. Let's say like the 2011 to like 2016 range, when it was like really at its height in a lot of sub-fan communities. There's a big difference between the two now. And that's another video. I can make another part. I can make a part 2 for that one. If you want to see that one, let me know. Just let me know. I ask these questions not for engagement, but rather to find out if anybody out there is interested in the same weird things I am. I mean, I'll still probably make the video one day. It's just like, I want to know if there's somebody else out there who shares my interests. So now that I've covered that stuff, let's talk about the origins of the Citra scale. Now, as far as I could tell from looking through articles, digging through fan lore, I'll link fan lore down below if anybody wants to go take a rabbit hole deep dive tonight. It's great fun with a bottle of whiskey. But yeah, I looked through there. The closest I could find for an actual origin story for the Citra scale is in the anime fandoms of like the late 90s, early 2000s, when message boards and fan sites were becoming a thing. Anecdotally, it has always been contributed to the fact that there was a now in America we use the word hentai. I think the word ichi is actually used in Japan to denote an adult film that's animated. That's beside the point. But there was a film back then that was called Lemon Cream. Why? No idea. That's been lost of time. I couldn't even find it when I was Googling around for it. Please don't send me a link if you find it. Like, that's fine. I can live without seeing it. In any case, it was called Lemon Cream. In anime communities, to denote explicit content, the term lemon started to become shorthand for explicit content. Now, as communities grew and moved over into other fandoms and things like that, a lot of people carried the term with them. I am one of those people. I started my fan fiction journey around the same time, back in like the old school Sailor Moon forums. I was super into Sailor Moon as a teenager. Still kind of am. It holds up for the most part. So I was in those communities, and when I moved on to other communities, I used a lot of the same terminology I had learned there. So you sort of spread it through other communities. As time went on and things spread, Lime got added. I don't remember seeing Lime in like fanfiction tags and summaries. Well, summaries, because we didn't really have tags back then like we do now on AO3. But in summaries until like, I want to say I was in college, like 06, 07 was really when I saw that one. I'm not saying it wasn't circulating beforehand. It's just at that point it made it into the fandoms that I was like taking a part of. I don't really know how to explain. How do you explain? Like, you consume the content and you make the content. Like, kind of like YouTube. I watch YouTube and then I make YouTubes. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing of, that's when I started seeing it in the communities I was involved with. I've been involved in many communities over the years. Not all of them use the Citra scale. It definitely fell out of fashion when AO3 came about. AO3, I got my AO3 count in 2011. I want to say 2010, 2011. I'll put in here their founding year, but AO3 was very much a reactionary website to another thing I'm going to talk about, which is the problems with fanfiction.net, specifically fanfiction.net back in the day. And that is the fact that fanfiction.net had let's call it several, cease and desist eras in its operation. If you don't know what fanfiction.net is, it's what it says on the tin. It was basically one of the first all-inclusive, anybody could post for any fandom fan fiction website. Before that, there were different forums and there were different fan sites, but you had to adhere to whatever fandom or specific subgenre or whatever it was on there. Fanfiction.net was the first one that I know of that was just basically, it was open for anybody and everybody, no matter your fandom or your type of content, with a few exceptions. There's an entire banned list of things over on Fanlore. I'll probably link that down too if you just want to look, because it's a wild ride too. But yeah, so it was the first site. It was my first site that I was on. Now, I was not really an active participant on fanfiction.net, creating fanfiction. In the era I'm going to talk about, I was definitely reading fan fiction, but I was more so still geared towards those smaller fan sites. So I wasn't really caught up in all of this. But there were several cease and desist eras, like I said. The first one dealt with original copyright holders sending cease and desist letters to fan creators. That's a whole other video. I can do a whole other one about that too. But they basically, Anne Rice and She Who Will Not Be Named, basically would send emails out to people telling them to stop posting, and send emails out to fanfiction.net and a few other fanfiction sites to basically tell them to stop. Naturally, people didn't. If they had, we wouldn't have the Mortal Instruments. But yeah, that was the first really big era. They eventually backed down because of lots of things, mostly the fact that they didn't really have a legal leg to stand on under the laws at the time, especially internationally. And also because I think a lot of them just realized it wasn't worth the effort. Now, the second came a few years later, when there was the first quote-unquote porn ban. A lot of people watching this probably remember the Tumblr ban on porn. This predates it by several years. Think the early 2000s when this was going down. So what they did was basically anything that had explicit content in it was banned. Full stop. Now, the Citrus scale was already used somewhat in order to skirt the censors in some forums and stuff like that by basically letting you know it was in it, but not necessarily garnering attention to begin with. After the porn ban on FF.net, I started seeing this everywhere, because I don't think a lot of the moderators understood what the language meant, so it slipped through the radar. If you were to write mature content on it, they'd know what it meant, but if you were to say lime, they have no idea what that means. Maybe it's part of the fandom, they don't know. There's literally too many to count. And that's also the reason why explicit content bans on FF.net have gone down significantly. Now, FF.net is slowly dying. A slow, painful, downhill trudge into oblivion. It'll get there in the next couple of years. So if you know any stories you have over there, they're your own or somebody else's, and you want to back them up, I'd say back them up now. But they've largely lifted the porn bans. The porn bans also had to do with the fact that there was an argument being made at the time about... I am not going to go into a lot of this. I studied philosophy of law a little bit in college, sat on several lectures, and basically talks about this. That's not important right now. The problem with that was, even though that's what they were going with, the problem is they did not know the ages of the people engaging with the content. Meaning they didn't know who was creating it, who was engaging with it, who was reading it, and the characters were, for the largest part, fictional. This is a complicated, nebulous thing that I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to in this very specific content or context, but it was something that was being bandied around at the time. So again, a lot of content creators started using tags in order to basically skirt a lot of the issues with that. Did it work? Not always, but sometimes it did. And like I said, that's a conversation in and of itself. It's a complicated one, and I honestly don't think, even if I were to research it for the next 8 months, I could do it justice, especially considering I've seen people with actual PhDs flounder with this topic. So there's that. But that was something that was talked about, and it led to the porn bans. Now, the porn bans, like I said, have mostly been lifted at this point. We've moved on. AO3 came about. They used its tagging system so that not only for ratings but other things, so that you could basically narrow down your content to what you felt was appropriate for yourself or even your child. So that pretty much did the kibosh to that, especially when people move from one platform to the other. Now, why is the citrus scale still around? The answer is because of Tumblr. The tags were used on Tumblr off and on throughout the entire era after AO3 came about. I'd seen them over there. But specifically, they saw a resurgence with the porn bans on Tumblr. And I saw somebody make an anecdotal comment that, Gen Z was the one that, revitalized this. I don't think that's true, because I don't think any of them were old enough to know what it was. Meaning it fell out of fashion long before most of Gen Z was involved with fandoms. I think it's likely millennials and Gen Xers who remember those terms who started using them again. Probably in a comment or in a random post, and then other people caught on to the context and started using them. So maybe Gen Z made it spread like wildfire outside of a few instances of older content absorbers talking about it. But it certainly wasn't, it didn't originate with Gen Z, like I said, only because I don't think that they would have been active enough in the fandoms back in the day when it was being used and when these were common terms to be able to turn around and start implementing them as a secret code on Tumblr. Pick up on them and run with them, sure, yeah, they could have done that. They could have easily spread it like wildfire, and that's the reason why it picked up again. But I don't think they're the originators of why it became so popular on Tumblr. But yeah, so in this big long video that I gave you, we have the citrus scale. Something that on the surface doesn't seem all that complicated, but when you start picking back the layers like an onion, you kind of find out that there's a lot more underneath than you really thought there was. And this is by no means a comprehensive video. This video was meant to be a summary to hand to you guys and go, here's this thing that you might not know about, and this is what it is and where it came from and its impact, because it's probably still going to be used off and on periodically, especially as sentiments change, there's bans, there's things like that, just the nebulous nature of fandoms and the content that is driven by them. So I doubt it's ever going to really fall out of fashion, considering, as far as I could tell, it was probably used as early as 1999, and we're sitting at the end of 2022 right now. So yeah, it's probably not going anywhere anytime soon in those very specific spaces. With that being said, if you guys have any questions, concerns, not about my mental health, I already know that that's unstable, please comment down below. If there's anything you want me to dive in deeper with you guys or give an update on, just comment down below. I take them into consideration. I know people have commented on some other videos, and I haven't gotten the videos out yet on the content. That is not for lack of trying. Several of them I've tried to film several times or I'm working on. I just haven't managed to basically get it to the point where I want to show you guys. It takes a lot of work behind the camera sometimes to do stuff so that I can put it out for you, and so that I feel like it doesn't have to be the best quality ever. You guys are seeing me in my spare bedroom with my desk behind me. Like, this is not like a Mr. Beast show, okay? But I do want to put the best content out there for you guys. And sometimes that means scrapping something that I've already worked on as far as notes and everything else and going back to the research board and seeing if I can find something else. That's what happened with this, because I realized there was a gap in my research. I rearranged the notes, I filled in the gap, and I don't really think it's noticeable. Maybe it's noticeable. But the real answer is I just couldn't find the information to validate what I was going to say. So I just set it aside for right now. I might come back to it later. And guys, if you want to hit the thumbs up button and let me know that you like this, thank you. If you want to subscribe to my channel, go right ahead. I'm going to start doing more content like this. I've got some life stuff going on that I've alluded to on here. I'll probably go into a little bit more in depth because of stuff that's going on, but that's beside the point. That's not what this video is about. So yeah, go ahead, subscribe. I'm going to keep popping up the videos now. I've got an entire list of notes and videos next to me on my laptop, so I'm going to start getting those out. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. It's greatly appreciated, and I'll see you later. Bye.